to a soccer game and it being like really cold in the morning and everyone's just sitting there like shivering, like waiting to start getting warmed up.
Yep.
What did you do? Paint. Paint. I got 2 new pairs of pants for my birthday and I still haven't worn either one. Welcome to the turning. Ready? We're going to get started. Hello everyone. How many viewers do we have, Kai? Down to 1. Down to 1. Well, to whoever out there is watching, this is going to be a special behind the scenes tour just for you. So welcome back everybody who watches this later to the Butterfly House and Aquarium's Facebook Live series, where we go behind the scenes to show you something that you wouldn't otherwise see if you just came here on a normal day. So showing you stuff that happens when you're not here. Today I have Jenae with me. Jenae is one of our biologists. So Jenae, tell us about what you do here.
Yeah, so I am one of the biologists. There's a couple of us that care for our special conservatory, which is 3,600 square feet of a temperature regulated environment, very similar to a greenhouse. We take care of the plants and animals in here. We take care of all the butterfly shipments that come in, but we also take care of our animal ambassadors here.
Awesome. How did you get into this job field? How did you become a biologist?
Yeah, growing up, I really loved being outside and I loved working with animals. So I always had a jar with some sort of bug in it and running around outside. We also fostered a lot of dogs through the Humane Society, and I even got to do zoo crew at the Watertown Zoo. So really animals have always been part of my life. So I knew I wanted to go into that. Furthering my education, I went to Minnesota State University, Moorhead. I got my 4-year degree in ecology. And during that time, I was able to spend some time researching. I focused my love on fish and aquatics and did a semester study in Hawaii. When I came back from Hawaii, I graduated and went to grad school in Texas, where I studied aquatic resources. And after my graduate degree, I moved back and I was able to start volunteering in places I love. One of those places was here at the Butterfly House and Aquarium. I did an internship as an aquarist, but also I was volunteering at a scuba shop as well as at the zoo. And from then on, I was at a veterinary clinic, which I loved my job there. But someone from here contacted me and let me know that there would be a position open. And I jumped at the chance since during my time, not directly in maybe zoos or aquariums, I did start my own Facebook page having to do with monarch rearing and educating people on monarch butterflies and milkweed, their host plant.
Oh, wow. What a route to get here. It sounds like it was almost your destiny to end up here.
I'd like to think so, yes.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I have another question. This one's really tough. What is your favorite part of your job?
Now it's hard to choose.
Sure.
Because I do love my job. My favorite part is probably that my job is active. I'm not sitting behind a desk. That's not for me. I like to do something different and new every day, which means I get to come to a very unique place and I get to help educate people. Probably my favorite part is making people smile. So not every job is something where you get to see people come in, laugh, and learn. But we make people smile while also educating them and learning about conservation and things around the earth that they may not usually see, especially in South Dakota.
Wow, it's a very, very good answer. I would say my answer would be very similar to that. So thanks for answering all that stuff, telling us all about yourself. Now tell me, what are we going to be showing people today?
Yeah, so when you look around the conservatory, you see a lot of plants. And then the conservatory is always changing. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about what it takes for us to keep up all of these plants, all of this environment, and kind of show you the regular things we do on the daily, but also things you may not think about.
Awesome. So what do you want to show us first?
Yeah, so one of our biggest things is watering here. So our watering really depends on our temperature. So we do have a full control panel here. We have a regulated temperature in the conservatory, but of course it does fluctuate with the temperature that's outside. So on average, we like to keep it at 85 in here. Anytime it drops below 85, our heaters, our boiler system, they turn on. So of course in the winter, most of the time, our heaters and boiler system is always on. Of course, right now we're fighting that outside, 4-degree high of temperature today.
Yes.
So right now it's only about 70 degrees. So one of the things I do right away in the morning is I open up the shades, which you can see on the top. So we do have a glass tempered roof, and that acts as a greenhouse effect. So I did open up those shades this morning to get some sun in here. Now it's really important to get some sun in here because butterflies specifically won't fly without it being a minimum of 65 to 70 degrees. So if you turn around, you can see these guys roosting right on these plants here. These are a bunch of our Mormon species. So these Mormon species are roosting. Butterflies don't have a sleep period. They do have a roosting instead. We've got some more over here. So your typical roosting is hanging upside down and just relaxing. So these guys are conserving their energy and warming up. So that's the first thing I do every morning. Check the temperature and get things set to warm up for the day. Another thing we do, temperature dependent and of course water dependent, is watering. So we have a lot of plants. It's really important to keep them watered. So one of the things I can do is check our moisture level. And so we have a lot of our tools stored back in our work corner. Kind of like a little garden shed. Hi. So one of the best tools we use is a moisture meter. And this is just going to tell us how dry or how moist any area is. So we are going to stick this in the soil. And it'll give us a nice reading. So every plant has a different reading or a different likeness per se. So right now we are in the green zone, which I really like to have. For a tropical environment, which we aim for here, we like to have green to blue for wet. So that leads me to watering. So one of my first things I'll do for watering is to set out sprinklers and soaker hoses. Now I use those because it's such a big area. It would take me a long time to hand water this area. So this is one of my sprinklers. This is my longest hose sprinkler. And so I like to set it up at an area where it can do a full fan. And I like to do a heavy soak. Now a heavier soak is suggested because that promotes our plants to get longer roots and to grow deeper roots. So they're not just top surface roots. If a plant gets too big, it will literally tip over if it doesn't have enough root structure. So the deeper watering we do prevents compaction and allows our plants to be nice and healthy. So a lot of times I will sit this here, set it to full fan, and let it go and set my alarm for 10 or 15 minutes so I can get that nice soak. After I do that in the morning, I'm gonna do just a little walk around, make sure all of the plants are doing well. So as we look around, you can see different plants have different growth patterns. So this is one of our porter weeds. They are a very good nectaring source. And so this plant is doing very well. So I'm gonna just literally monitor plant health as I walk around. If I see a plant that has a wilted leaf or even a wilted branch, it's time to trim that back. And so plant trimming is a lot of what we do. You can see we've got Colton trimming today. Colton is taking care of one of our biggest features, the fiddle leaf fig tree. So this is a common household plant. And this one is part of the ficus family, which means that when it cuts, it does usually leave a sap. So you can see here, it's got a little bit of a oily, milky sap that comes from it. So this is part of what we have to be aware of, because this sap will get all over, and we have to continue to clean that up. Now it's really important for us to manage our plants, keep them not only well trimmed and healthy, but we also need to keep them away from the roof. So we have a little mesh screening before our glass tempered roof. And since this is a contained area, it's really important for us to follow all of our permit and regulations. So one of the regulations is that nothing can be touching that mesh. So we do, every couple months, have to do what we call a ceiling trim day. So Colton did that on this fiddle leaf fig today, and as well as our Norfolk pine in the corner. Now those are some of our taller plants that we need to keep away from the roof. So that's a great start to my day.
So talking about how you walk around and check all the plants in here.
Yep.
Seems like that'd be a lot of work. How many species of plants, roughly?
Yeah, so we try to keep a good idea of how many plants we have. We do have flashcards, so we ourselves can learn about the plants, identify them, identify their needs. And so I did a quick count yesterday, and we're at about 45 to 50 plants in here.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of plants.
It sure is.
Something that the first time I ever walked in here and I looked around, I saw the greenery, I was shocked because obviously it's beautiful. And then I thought, how difficult must it be to raise all of these plants here in South Dakota? Obviously you're talking about all these plants are tropical. You know, this is not even remotely close to the environment they want to live in. Right. So what are some of the difficulties that come with raising plants in this indoor contained environment?
Yeah, so it does have its own situation of difficulties. First of all, like you said, it's contained. So we can't just bring anything in here and take anything out. Anything that comes in here, touches the soil, needs to be decontaminated before it can leave the space. Another struggle is that this place was planted 20 years ago. And so we are combating some problems that probably started back then. So as an area that's been planted for long term, the soil continues to sink just like a natural garden. And so that is causing a little bit of compaction. We do try to test our soil at a lab in town here about once or twice a year. That usually tells us what we need to do. So this year it came back that we had high salts, but also we had a lot of puddling going on. And so talking with those professionals, they suggested to do aerating of our soil, but also to add different matter that would provide drainage patterns. And that's a struggle for us because when you typically think of aerating an area, a field, a soccer field, a garden, you've got a clear soil top and you can just bring a machine in. Now for us, we don't have that clear soil top. We've got a lot of plants, a lot of root systems we don't want to hit. And so we kind of had to think outside of the box. So we started with a soil core sampler and hand pressing individual holes about 1 inch wide to provide drainage and aeration in our soil. Now we have upgraded since then and gone to a 2-foot long drill bit that we're literally once a month taking and drilling holes into the soil that we can to provide that drainage. Now drainage is important. Like we said earlier, plants need that deep root system. If our soil is compacted and only soaking water into the top 6 inches, then the root systems are only going to that top 6 inches as well. And our nutrients that we want to flush all the way through are sitting in that top 6 inches as well.
Wow.
So we've done a lot of things to try to compact that along with the drilling. We do sprinkle perlite, which is this white speckled granular looking stuff you see here. So perlite is a volcanic ash, or excuse me, a volcanic glass actually that's heated up. And it is not something that will break down and leach nutrients away from plants. It's just something that takes space. So we do have enough organic matter right now, so we don't want to add something natural like mulch and stir it in because that would pull away from the nutrients of the plants.
Got it. It sounds like what you're saying is it would be a lot easier just to move everything down to the tropics and raise it there.
Exactly, yeah.
But,
I'm on board.
Obviously, as much as I would love to do that, I'd love to go live in Costa Rica and work at this place.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So, talk about the challenges. Are there any benefits to raising plants in here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in South Dakota. We all know that the weather is not great for plants in the winter, even in the fall sometimes. So we are able to have plants all year round. And then we are able to semi-control the temperature, but also semi-control what we allow in for sun. So sometimes in the winter, the sun can be a bit harsh. And so we can determine how far we open our shades, all the way, halfway, whatever it may be. But then also it's nice because we do control what comes in and what comes out of here. We control it as much as we can.
Sure.
Now we do have a natural area, so it does attract a lot of ants. And we do have plant pests and plant diseases, just like any garden would. So we do get leaf hoppers occasionally. And we do get cockroaches occasionally because we put nectar in here. So it's a high sugar source, and those animals are really attracted to that.
Got it. Interesting. Well, that's part of the reason we have the birds, right? Is to
Absolutely.
help out a little bit with all those cockroaches and,
Yes.
and those pests.
Yes, and part of our daily, weekly, monthly tasks is pest control. So we use a diatomaceous earth sprinkled powder underneath of our feeding trays and our nectar trays. But we also use a pest control called neem oil, and that's a solution spray. I can show you guys that real quick. And neem oil is actually generally good for quite a few pests, but also diseases on plants. Yes, wonderful, thank you. So this is ready to use. We take a couple of teaspoons or tablespoons of that oil and put it in a garden sprayer. And I will actually show you one of our plants that we're treating with this right now. So one of our most finicky plants has turned out to be our baby bottle brush tree. So the bottle brush tree gets a big brush-like flower, and it's a great nectar source. So we got one in last year to help up our nectar sources, but Ours has been quite finicky in the area it's at. And so a couple weeks ago, we noticed it did have a fungus on it. So we learned that it likes strict watering from the base and not on the leaves. But in order to treat this, the leaves do have to be sprayed to treat the fungus itself. So I do treat this a couple times a week, sometimes a couple times a day if I have the opportunity. And this has been slowly working away on that fungus. Neem oil is safe and natural, so it's safe for birds. And so this is why we use this. This would also take care of any spider mites we have. So it's kind of our go-to pest control here in the conservatory.
Huh. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Let me think how I want to ask this.
That's
How
right.
often do we get new plants in here? Or is it fairly static? Is it just, trying to keep the status quo?
That's a great question. So once in the spring, we like to do something really big, and we call it Dirt Party Day. So we bring in compost. This year we brought in 1.5 tons of compost to combat that compaction, but also add in organic matter, stir in things that the plants need. Now, after that is a great time to get new plants. And so we do like to focus on springtime ordering. We like to focus on nectaring sources. So you can see here is one of our porterweed again. This is our most highly visited plant. These seed shoots have small flowers that grow all along them. And so spring, I would say, is the best time to get plants. We do like to get some plants that we know may not make it a whole season, or just one season, may not make it to the next year. Now, our porterweed has been doing great over the winter. We have some other we get in, Egyptian star cluster, maybe begonias, or impatiens, that we understand are just seasonal. So yeah, we do see those kind of keeping them through the summer months, upping those nectar sources. And we do see some winter die-off, which is pretty typical here. Some of our plants, like our plumeria trees, they fully drop their leaves in the winter, but bloom beautifully come spring and summer again.
Wonderful. How do the animals in here interact with the plants? Obviously, the butterflies, I assume, use them in some way, but...
Absolutely. Yeah, so our butterflies love our nectar sources. That's going to be their main source of food. But we do have some butterflies that aren't nectaring at all. They prefer fruit and things like that. So of course, we try to up our nectar sources because we keep over 1,000 butterflies flying at all times. But you'll look around and you see, some things aren't blooming right now. We try to keep a rotation of things blooming, but also some things don't have flowers at all. So you can turn and see our giant rubber tree. Now this is a great plant because it is a tall feature that allows our plants to roost on it, our butterflies to roost on it, but also it provides shade. Now shade is important not only for butterflies, but also for our birds. A lot of our ferns, or even our peace lilies here, also provide cover for our birds. And you can see some more roosting habitat when you turn around here and look at our Norfolk pine. So again, this doesn't bloom, but it is something that provides safe haven for those butterflies.
Interesting. And so the birds don't eat any of the plants or anything like that, or do they sometimes?
Sometimes our little birds do peck at my plants a bit, but we make sure all of our plants are healthy. It's a healthy thing for the birds to get some vegetation in their diet as well.
Interesting. All right, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
It's a two-parter. What is your favorite plant in here? And what is your, I'm not going to say least favorite, but the one that requires the most love?
Okay, great questions. So I'll take you down here a little ways. This plant is near and dear to my heart because about a year ago, I collected some seed pods from this Seguria plant. Now, Seguria is called tropical cucumber because it gets tiny little melon-looking pods. And so I found these seed pods, looked it up, said you could dry them out and plant them. So I went about drying them out, and I did plant them. And luckily for me, I had collected those pods because this plant is very touchy. If someone bumps it just right, as you can see here, an entire sprig of it will just die off. If you try to weave it in, it's probably just going to die. Now, this is one of our highest nectaring sources in the winter. You can really see that our butterflies love it. Luckily for us, that plant had completely died, but those seeds were thriving. So I had about 5 or 6 little 3 to 4 inch shoots of this guy. And we planted them along here and crossed our fingers. Luckily, it was able to take off. It shot up and shot out. So this is the beauty nearly 1 year later from raising from seed. And really nothing else in this conservatory have we raised from seed. We do some propagating, but really no seed raising. This is something that's also really hard to order from our tropical vendors. When we order in plants, we get them a lot from Florida or tropical areas, but this one was hard to find. So this one's near and dear to my heart. It's kind of my baby. Otherwise, talking about the most difficult plant is kind of a tough question.
Sure.
So it depends on the season, I would say. But if we go this way, I can show you some pothos. So this big gorgeous plant is your typical golden pothos, and pothos are also called the devil's ivy. Now that's because they are very prolific, especially in tropical areas. So when I first came here, we had pothos covering the entire ground of the conservatory. Now that had its perks because it did definitely keep the moisture in the conservatory soil, but it also was preventing us from seeing that soil, from keeping that soil from compacting, and it comes up everywhere. So even though we have removed a lot of this from the area, it will still pop up in random sections, and we'll find it scattered throughout the conservatory.
So it's just the problem child. It's
a little bit. I mean, it's easy to grow, right? So in places where we might have a hard time growing something, we want that pothos there because it may be the only thing that grows there. But sometimes, a lot of times, it gets in places where we don't want it.
makes sense. Well, before we're done, is there anything else you want people to know about the conservatory, especially about the plants, or do you think you've covered it all?
I think we covered a lot of it, but make sure that everyone knows that this is a tropical environment, so all of our butterflies here are tropical. We are contained, so we follow a lot of permits. We can't just bring in any plant or anything we want. Our permit does include specific species that we can and cannot bring in, but also specific plants because we cannot have any host plants here for our butterflies. That means that each individual butterfly has its own species of plant that it will lay eggs on, that its caterpillar can consume to become a chrysalis. We can't have any of those here because our butterflies would lay so many eggs and the caterpillars would literally eat us out of house and home. So that's a question we get a lot, and it's a really great question here. Even though we don't work with native species, we like to do a lot of native education. We like to educate people about planting their own pollinator gardens, which is really important for the periled monarch species. So we do have a free pollinator garden brochure at the front desk. We encourage you to grab while you're here.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Jenae, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge about the conservatory and all the plants in here, especially. I know that's your expertise and
Yes.
what you love to talk about, so I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, who tuned in and decided to join us as we went behind the scenes today. We really appreciate it. And we'd love for you to join us again next time. We do these every other week, maybe some thrown in between, but you can count on at least every other week. So join us next time as we go behind the scenes again and see something else really cool here at the Butterfly House and Aquarium. Thank you. Bye.